I just need more batteries. My batteries are low. So I ended up, we had a house full of kids last night until about midnight or 1 o'clock by the new time. And I'm usually get up at 5:15, 5:30 kind of guy. I did set my alarm for 7:30, but Harper woke me up, and then I had to go to the bathroom, and then you really don't want to hear about my life, do you? So we're in. Why? We're in church. Grab your Bibles. Thank you. And then did she unmute it? You know.
I don't know how to check, but I can check.
Okay, yeah, it's unmuted.
Okay, cool.
I love playing with our worship team, man. We have so much fun. It's just, I love our chemistry. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but we're like not in our very best lineup. I'm not a drummer. Noel's not a bass player. Noel's a very good bass player, and I'm an adequate drummer. But if we had a drummer, we would all shift one. And Noel's even a better electric guitar player, and my natural is bass. And it's just, but I don't know. We plug the in-ears in and we start playing music together, and it's a ton of fun, man. I'm glad you guys come along for the ride and sing along, and the ambience of everybody singing together. I love this room for just being able to the acoustics, and it's just, I don't know, it's a joy for me. I really, really, really enjoy our worship time. I need to get rid of these. Otherwise I'll be playing with them. There are 2 points in my sermon writing that I love. The first point is starting. I love copy and pasting what we're going to cover into a new document and getting it ready, and I use a certain color for the scripture, and then I use a certain color for my notes, and I use a certain color for other scripture, and then putting it all together is such a great joy. But my absolute favorite part of sermon writing is when I'm done, because I write everything in a 12-point font. But in order for me to see it on here, I have to enlarge it to an 18-point font. So I control all, I highlight everything, and I click that 18-point font. The very first thing I do is I go over and see how many pages it jumps to. And I just love that. It's like, oh, wow, yeah, 13 pages of notes, yeah. And you've heard me say a couple times, I've got 17 pages of notes today because we got a lot of ground to cover. Well, I clicked it last night as I finished today's sermon, and the number 26 came up. And I was like, and I actually got a little intimidated. I was like, so today's sermon might be a sermon in 2 parts, where we actually just stop in the middle somewhere and go, okay, we're going to pick it up here next week, which I know is what we do every week, but usually I try to bring a good ending, a point to an end, and say, this is the end of today's sermon, and here we are. There's really nowhere to do that in this sermon today. It's just all one big story. If you saw my post yesterday, it's chapters 42 to 45. It's 4 chapters, and it's all one story. And there's not really a good place to stop in the middle. So it might be that you have to promise to come back next week. And we'll have part B, March 8th, part B. So. And by the way I'm talking already, there's no way we're getting through it all today. So. We mentioned last week, and we read a little bit about Psalm 105, how it's kind of a retelling of the history of Israel. And in the middle there, it does have a few verses on Joseph. And what it tells us about Joseph's story is a different perspective than what we're gleaning from the book of Genesis. Psalm 105 gives us God's perspective of what was the events that we're covering in the book of Genesis. God sent a man ahead. That's what it said in Psalm 105. This was all God's purpose and God's plan, that he was sold into slavery, that he was bought by the Ishmaelites. The Ishmaelites were headed to Egypt. He was sold there on the slavery block to a man named Potiphar, who happened to be the captain of Pharaoh's guard. And it all looked like Joseph was being pinballed all the way around and just not really in control of any situation. And certainly Joseph wasn't, but God was. And sometimes it's hard for us to get our mind around that. the telling of the story from God's perspective is that he sent a man ahead. And that's different than his dad's perspective, Jacob. Right? Jacob thought he lost a son. And for him, that was his reality. He thought his son was dead. It was different than Joseph's perspective. He didn't plan on spending 2 years in jail. And he wasn't real happy about that, I would imagine. It's different than his 11 brothers' perspective, who got rid of the dreamer. And we're glad that he's gone, or at least they were for a time. It's different than Potiphar's perspective. He lost his number one gun. He lost his favored servant. It's different than Potiphar's wife's perspective. He lost a prospective notch on the headboard. The question is, who's right? Whose perspective is right? Ultimately, it's God's, right? Let every man be found a liar, it says in Romans chapter 3. Let every man be found a liar and God be found true. And that's what's happening in all this. Every one of the characters that we're reading of have a perspective of this story as they're out living it out. And they don't know how it's going to turn out. They don't know what's going to come of it except God, who can see around the corner of time, who knows what's happening, who's in control of all of these events. And if there's no greater lesson for us to learn, may we learn that. That God's in control of your life as well. God's in control of the events of your life, and he is orchestrating things behind the scene that we don't know what's coming around the bend. We can trust that he is good. So we read, Pharaoh has these dreams. They call Joseph out of jail. Joseph interprets the dreams. Because of that, Joseph is raised to prime minister. He's in control of all the land. Pharaoh's like, you take care of it all. Take care of the gathering of the grain. Take care of disseminating the grain and getting rid of it. And so he's raised to prime minister. They had 7 years of plenty. We covered a lot of time last week in our reading. 7 years of gathering 20% of the grain and storing it in storehouses. So much so the crop was so plentiful that they stopped keeping track. The Egyptians stopped keeping track. That's a strange statement considering how much they were precise in everything. And we'll talk about all of that a little more today. And now the famine has begun, and we know that 7 years of famine are coming, but as they're living it out, they don't know. Other than Joseph and Pharaoh, if he believes Joseph, which it seems he does, they understand that 7 years of famine are coming, but the people living in the land don't know that. Jacob doesn't know that. And so that's where we pick up the story. Genesis chapter 42, verse 1. It says, change of scenery back up to Canaan. It says, when Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt, Jacob said to his sons, why do you look at one another? So evidently they were setting the table with no food to eat, and they were just staring across the table and they're looking at Reuben going, that's a sandwich right there. He looks delicious. Why do you look at one another? And he said, indeed, I've heard there's grain in Egypt. Go down to that place and buy for us there, that we may live and not die. So that tells you the severity of the drought. That tells you the severity of the famine, that we might not die. And a good dad is always telling his kids, hey, get off your duff, do something. Right? That's what dad is telling people here. Go down to Egypt. Now you got to remember, the kids here are anywhere from 40 to 60 years old. These kids aren't kids. These kids they've got their own families. They've got, everything already sorted out. And they're all of age and should have maybe perhaps figured this out as well. But dad's still kind of trying to run the scene, and he hears of grain, and so he says, hey, go do something, would ya? I don't know why I did that Canadian accent. But hey. Did you guys hear last night that John Travolta went to the hospital and thought he had coronavirus?
Yeah.
Turns out it was just Saturday Night Fever.
Well,
He'll be staying alive. I do.
Turn away now from your wicked.
A good dad is always telling his kids jokes. Anyway, so Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt, but Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he said, lest some calamity befall him. So Jacob is still doing what he learned from his dad, Isaac, and Isaac learned from his dad, Abraham. This whole favoritism thing. He's like, you guys go down to Egypt, but just in case you all die, Benjamin's going to stay here. Kind of tells you how he felt about the other 10, that they were expendable. But he wants to keep Benjamin back now. And the sons of Israel went to buy grain among those who journeyed, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over the land, and it was he who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the earth. Ding, ding. Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he acted as a stranger to them and spoke roughly to them. And then he said to them, where do you come from? And they said, from the land of Canaan to buy food. So Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. So, interesting scene. When Joseph woke up this morning, he probably didn't think this was the events of the day that were going to unfold. His brothers roll up to buy grain, and he recognizes them immediately. And rather than saying, hey guys, how's it going? And having the reunion right here, he has some wisdom. He's gained some wisdom over the 20 years he's been in Egypt now. He says, let's see who they are before we see who I am, or they see who I am. He wants to know what's become of them. He recognized them, they don't recognize him. That would be the case because Joseph probably didn't look anything like he did when he was thrown in the pit and sold into slavery. First of all, 20 years have gone by. Second of all, he now is dressing like an Egyptian, walking like an Egyptian. All the cops in the zone, trying to say. And so, sorry, we have no chance of getting through all this. So, anyway, he's got the hairstyle, probably shaved bald, shaved face. He's wearing the white linens. He's got the gold collar around his neck. He's got the Egyptian makeup and mascara and all that kind of stuff. So he doesn't look anything like the Joseph that they would remember. Plus he's in a situation, they assume they're meeting a stranger, so they don't try to put two and two together. He does. Then Joseph remembered the dreams which he had dreamed about them. Remember, they've bowed down now. They're all bowing down to him and ding ding. And they said to him, you are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land. As all this is happening, Joseph has this flood of memories coming back into his memory bank, He's remembering the dreams he had as a young child. He's remembering the coat that his dad gave him. He's remembering growing up in Canaan and being a shepherd with his brothers. He's remembering his brothers hating him because of the favoritism his dad showed him. And so he starts thinking on his feet. In his wisdom, he wants to work his brothers over to see if they've changed at all since the last time that they saw him. As we read through the events and the way Joseph treats his brothers, it's easy for us to look at Joseph as vindictive. And I don't think that's the case. I don't think Joseph was like, I'm going to torture you the way you guys tortured me. I don't think this is a revenge plot at all. That's not Joseph's MO. Remember what we read about him while he was in prison? That he was humbled by the irons that were placed on his leg. I don't think that that's Joseph's motto anymore, or the way that he would live. He's not been vindictive. I think he wants to test them, to see if they truly have changed or repented from the way things were. You've come to spy, to see the nakedness of the land. And they said to him, no, my lord, but your servants have come to buy food. We are all one man's sons. We are honest men. Your servants are not spies. But he said to them, no, but you have come to see the nakedness of the land. We got to remember, what's the, Shall help me out, or anybody. You used to be able to buy at Lifeway. They had a whole section of these little figurines that were all, the willow tree, yeah. Yeah, they were all beautiful and, and the shepherds were, like good-looking dudes, not, very meek and mild. That's not shepherds. Shepherds were Harley Davidson dudes. I mean, they wore the leathers and the chaps, and they were the rough guys. Now, you guys know that some Harley Davidson dudes are some of the best guys around in the way they take care of people, the way they take care of each other. But they put on a front. Shepherds put on a front. They're rough dudes. They lived out in the wilderness. They were like, fighting bears, and David was like, killing bears. And it's just like, these were rough guys. And if 10 guys rolled into town together, with a posse, it's like, okay, what's going on here? These guys are coming to check out to see, they probably have a famine up there. They're probably coming here to see if Egypt might be worth raiding. And so Joseph's going to play that card. He's going to go, okay, that's kind of what it looks like. Let's play this to see what comes of it. So Joseph plays the card to see how they respond. And they said, your servants, we're 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And in fact, the youngest is with our father today, and one is no more. 20 years have gone by, and they're still upholding the lie. That's what they told Dad. Here's his coat. Kind of looks like he got ravaged by a wild beast. They had smeared his coat with goat's blood. 20 years, and they're still holding on to the lie. The one who is no more, according to them, is standing right in front of them. He's like, no, not yet. They told Dad he was destroyed by wild animals, and they're still holding on to that story. But as they give Joseph their story, Joseph is gaining information. Right? He's starting to piece things together, and he's starting to get more from them. And they don't even know they're being interrogated. What does Joseph know now? Joseph knows Benjamin's still alive. Right? We didn't know that at this point. He saw the 10, and he's probably wondering, well, where's Benjamin? And now they've said, well, Benjamin's still at home. Okay. Last time he saw Benjamin was a toddler. 2, 3, 4 years old. 20 years have gone by. Now he knows Benjamin, his blood brother, is still alive. But Joseph said to them, verse 14, "It says I spoke to you, saying, you are spies." He keeps pressing this card. He says, "In this manner you shall be tested. I'll see if you're telling the truth. By the life of Pharaoh, you shall not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you, and let him bring your brother. You shall be kept in prison, that your words may be tested to see whether there is any truth in you. Or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are all spies." So he put them all together in prison for 3 days. So his plot, Joseph's ploy here, is to bring Benjamin to Egypt. And hopefully his father, if he's still alive, and at this point I don't think Joseph knows for sure. So he throws them all in jail, 3 days. You guys sit here for a minute. And that gives Joseph a little bit of time to kind of sort things out, to say, okay, how are we going to play this? So 3 days go by, verse 18. Then Joseph said to them the third day, "Do this and live, for I fear God." Well, that's Jehovah. I fear Jehovah, their God. That would come as a surprise to these brothers. Why would an Egyptian monarch, why would an Egyptian prime minister fear Jehovah? But because he says this, now there's like, okay, now what's going on? Yet another twist to the plot, yet another bit of confusion for the brothers. But isn't that what Joseph has always been? Joseph has always feared God. That's what sets him apart from his brothers. That's what sets him apart from so far everybody else that we've run into. I mean, Abraham had moments of it, or had seasons of it, years of it. Isaac had moments of it. Jacob has had a time with God. We're going to see here in a moment that Jacob, we're not sure where he is with the whole God thing right now. But Joseph's always been marked by this fear of God that he has. So that's our marker too. He says, "If you're honest men, let one of your brothers be confined to your prison house, but you go and carry grain for the famine of your houses, and bring your youngest brother to me, so that your words will be verified, and you shall not die." And they did so. So the plan that Joseph creates will show if they've changed. Think about this. If they leave the one brother behind and never come back, never bring Benjamin back, they've not changed. They're still ditching brothers, right? That's what they did to Joseph. So if they leave the one in jail and never come back for him, they haven't changed at all. But if they come back for him and they bring Benjamin, well, maybe things are different. Maybe things do look different. So, to verse 21, they said to one another, "We are truly guilty concerning our brother, for we saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us, and we would not hear. Therefore, this distress has come upon us." Wow! 20 years, guilt that they carried as a yoke on their back. 20 years later, they still feel it. This is happening to us because of what we did to Joseph. That's what verse 21 says. They've not gotten over it. Guys, guilt is a terrible burden to carry. And our adversary would love to use every angle and every plot that he could to keep that guilt on your back, to keep that guilt on my back. Guilt is a horrible burden to carry. Listen, the Lord is ready to take your guilt if you're willing to give it to him. The Lord is ready to bring you peace instead, to shed that guilt. I saw this quote as I was looking for quotes on guilt yesterday. I love this. Listen, guilt is punishing yourself before God doesn't. Guilt is punishing yourself before God doesn't. That's grace, right? And maybe we need to pause here and just talk a little bit about condemnation versus conviction. Condemnation, the feeling of guilt, the one that we've messed up, right? I mean, yes, the guilt that we are guilty of is genuine. But our adversary, Satan, would want to take that guilt and make it condemnation and heap on us and saying, "You're not worthy. You're worthless. God doesn't love you." And he wants to take that guilt and make you feel guilty, make you feel horrible. Whereas conviction takes where you've done wrong and says, "No, let's try to steer you away from that." And God uses conviction in our lives to say, let's change our behavior. The way you can tell the difference between condemnation and conviction is this. Condemnation drives you away from God. Conviction drives you toward God. And it can be over the same thing. It's the way that we are interpreting it, the way that we are understanding it, the way we are reacting to it. Condemnation drives us away from God. Conviction drives us toward God. Conviction is a good thing over our sin. Condemnation, therefore there shall be now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus, right? Romans chapter 8, verse 1. They still feel this amazing guilt. The two things aren't even related. Joseph, Zaphathphaneah, whatever his name is, whatever his Egyptian name is, that's how we would be introduced to these guys, is like, you guys keep one guy here in jail and send everybody home, bring Benjamin back. And they're like, this is because we're guilty. This is what we did to Joseph. They're not even related. Yet that's how they feel about this. And Reuben answered him and answered them, they're speaking in a group now, "Did I not speak to you, saying, do not sin against the boy? And you would not listen. I tried to rise above this, guys. Therefore, behold, his blood is now required of us. Now we're guilty." But they did not know that Joseph understood them before he spoke to them through an interpreter, right? So up to this point, the man has been speaking through an interpreter who's speaking to them in Hebrew. Joseph speaking in Egyptian. They don't know that he can understand what they're saying. And as they start confessing all of this stuff, it's going to get to Joseph. Look at verse 24. "And he turned himself away from them and wept. And he returned to them again and talked without them. And he took Simeon from them and bound them before their eyes." We don't know this, but I wonder who threw Joseph into the pit. I mean, it says, if you go back to chapter 37, they threw him in the pit. but probably there was one that was leading the way. Was it Simeon? I'm just guessing by the way who Joseph chooses to throw in jail, but maybe that's what happened. Maybe it was Simeon that was like, and so now Joseph's like, I don't know. We know, if nothing else, Joseph was aware of Simeon's murderous ways. Right? Circumcise everybody and then kill them all. That was Simeon. And so I just wondered what the motivation was for choosing Simeon in this moment. Then Joseph gave a command to fill their sacks with grain, to restore every man's money to his sack, so they're not paying for the grain, this is a gift, and to give them provisions for the journey, and thus he did for them. Remember, we mentioned at the end of last week's sermon the parallels between Joseph and Jesus, Psalm 34, I think I read. And I see another one here. Now, he's not taking their money, he's providing for them, and doesn't the Lord provide for us? It's a gift, and that's what God is a giver. And so there's a parallel there as well. So they loaded their donkeys with the grain and departed from there. But as one of them opened his sack to give his donkey feed at the encampment, he saw his money, and there it was in the mouth of his sack. So he said to his brothers, "Ha! My money's been restored, and there it is in my sack." And their hearts failed them, and they were afraid, saying to one another, "What is this that God has done to us?" A guilty conscience can't see a blessing. What's going on? Our money is here. Our money's here. Our money's here. The guy's going to kill us. They thought it was a curse, yet God was truly taking care of them. God was providing for them. Joseph was like, they don't need to pay for this. I've got the surplus. Let me take care of it. And then they went to Jacob, to their father in the land of Canaan. It's about a 250-mile journey. And they told them all that happened to them, saying, and we're going to get a recap here, the man who was Lord of the land spoke roughly to us and took us for spies of the country. But we said to him, "We are honest men. We are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is with our father this day in the land of Canaan." Then the man, the Lord of the country, said to us, "By this I will know that you're honest men. Leave one of your brothers here with me. Take food for the famine of your households and be gone. And bring your youngest brother to me, so I shall know that you are not spies, but that you are honest men. I will grant your brother to you, and you may trade in the land." Then it happened, as they emptied their sacks, that surprisingly each man's bundle of money was in the same sack. And when they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. And Jacob their father said to them, "You've bereaved me. Joseph's no more. Simeon is no more. And now you want to take Benjamin. All these things are against me." Wow. Jacob, the man of faith? Oh, all these things are against me. Woe is me. Do you guys know Christians like that? It's just like Eeyore mentality. Why would anyone want to become a Christian if that's the way they're going to act? It's probably what the world would think. And it's so funny, our sins look so much worse on somebody else, don't they? Because I'm guilty of the Eeyore mentality at times. And I know I have people in mind to say, well, that's an Eeyore Christian. That's an Eeyore Christian at times. Everything's against me. Life sucks. Can we just get it over with? Eeyore. Who still loved Eeyore, right? Jesus still loves us. But where is Jacob in all of this? What? The way he states this, right? He says, "You've bereaved me," and the first thing he says after "you've bereaved me" is "Joseph is no more." I wonder if Jacob has been suspicious for 20 years of these brothers. I wonder if what they told Jacob satisfied him. It doesn't sound like it by the way he phrases this. I wonder if he's suspicious about Joseph. Then Reuben spoke to his father, saying, "Kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands and I will bring him back to you." Reuben speaks up in the moment. He's like, we got to come up with a solution because we got to get Simeon. We're going to probably need more grain here. What do we do? Kind of sounds like Peter. I love Peter in the New Testament, right? Peter is ready, fire, aim. Right? That's Peter's life. Chop off the guy's ear. Don't care about the situation. We'll see what happens, and Jesus, I'll never deny you. That's Peter. Ready, aim. Ready, fire, aim. Kind of sounds like what Reuben is doing here. I wonder how Reuben's kids felt about this arrangement, right? The boys are standing there. Kill my 2 sons. Wow, thanks, Dad. Father of the year. But he is making an attempt to appease his father and to get Simeon back. Are we seeing change here? Not the best plan, but maybe we are seeing some change. So Jacob replies, verse 38. He said, "My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. If any calamity should befall him along the way in which you go, then you would bring down my gray hair with the sorrow to the grave." So Dad puts his foot down, Jacob. Benjamin's the son of my favorite wife. The only one left. The other one's dead. He ain't going, no. So verse 1 of 43 says, "Now the famine was severe in the land." So they've eaten through the grain and time keeps on ticking. Time has a way of changing resolve at times, right? Time has a way of changing things. And verse 2 says, "It came to pass when they had eaten up the grain which they had brought up from Egypt that their father said to them, 'Go back and buy us a little food. It looks like the famine's going to last longer than we anticipated. Go back and get some more food.' But Judah spoke to him," and we don't know how much time has passed here, maybe a year. Simeon's rotting in an Egyptian jail for a year. Don't know. But they've run out of food. Judah spoke to him, saying, "The man solemnly warned us, saying, 'You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you send our brother with us, we'll go down and buy food.'" Hey, Dad, I know you're old. Maybe you forgot over the last year as we've been eating this grain what the arrangement was. We can't get food unless Ben's with us. So Judah says, "If you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, 'You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you.' And Israel said, 'Why did you deal so wrongfully with me and tell the man whether you had still another brother?'" And Jacob is saying, "Hey guys, why didn't you just lie about this? You're kind of good at it. I mean, you call yourselves honest men. That's number one lie. I mean, my name's Jacob, heel catcher, deceiver. It's kind of in our blood. Why didn't you just lie and not tell them about Benjamin?" And they said, "The man asked us pointedly about ourselves and our family, saying, 'Is your father still alive? Have you another brother?' And we told him according to these words. Could we possibly have known that he would say, 'Bring your brother down'? These questions caught us off guard, Dad. I didn't know that this was what he was going to ask." So Joseph's plan is working really well. Then Judah said to Israel, his father, now watch this, "Send the lad with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you, and also our little ones." Reason can be a hard truth at times. And logic drawn out can bring about a point that sometimes we're not real comfortable with. What Judah's saying here is, "Dad, you don't send Benjamin, it's not only going to be him that's dead, it's going to be all of us. We're going to run out of food, and we're all going to die." Us and our little ones, and Israel and the nation will be no more. Dad, you need to send Benjamin. Now watch what he does. Verse 9, Judah. I myself will be surety for him. From my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. For if we had not lingered, surely by now we would have returned the second time. He's like, I could have been back by now. You've been dilly-dallying, Dad. We're all going to die. We got to go. But also look at what Judah's doing here. Look how it's different than Reuben. Reuben's like, kill my 2 sons if I don't come back. Nothing would happen to Reuben. I mean, sure, he'd lose a couple sons, but Judah's offering himself. And then look down Judah's lineage. A couple thousand years. To a man who would come and offer us the very same thing. I myself will be surety for them. Let me bear their blame forever, Jesus would say. Jesus makes the same offer to his Father on our behalf. Dad, let me bear their blame. Theologically, it's called penal substitutionary atonement. It's the idea that Jesus is taking the penalty, penal system, the penalty, as a substitute to make atonement, to make things right, to make things... The way I always understood the word atonement is to break it down. At-one-ment. At-one, to bring the relationship back together, to bring the fellowship between us and God back together. He becomes our replacement. He becomes our substitute, taking our penalty. Judah is offering that here. Let me bear the guilt forever if I don't bring him back. And if we look down Judah's line, we can see a man, Jesus, who does the same thing for you and I. And their father, Israel, said to them, if it must be so, then do this. Take some of the best fruits of the land in your vessels and carry down a present for the man. A little balm, a little honey, spices and myrrh, pistachio nuts and almonds. So they weren't totally out of food, but they were out of grain, it seems. Take double your money in your hand, and take back in your hand the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. So Jacob here is like, okay, if this has to happen, let's do it this way. And Jacob always plotting and planning and conniving and considering. And he says, take a gift. And Jacob knows a little bit about gifts, right? Remember what he did with Esau? He sent the gift, and he sent the gift, and sent the gift, and buttered Esau up for like 11 different gifts. So he's got that. He knows how to do the whole gift thing. Take a little bit of everything that maybe they don't have in Egypt, and go down. And then take double the money, and then also take the money that was oversighted. So really take 3 times the money is what he's saying, plus this gift. And he acquiesces, verse 13, take your brother also. Arise and go back to the man. And may God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may release your brother, what's his name? And Benjamin. If I'm bereaved, I'm bereaved. Come on, Jacob. Have some faith, man. So the man took the present and Benjamin, and they took double the money in their hand and arose and went down to Egypt, and they stood before Joseph. And when Joseph saw Benjamin with them, then he said to the steward of his house, right, the position that he had for Potiphar, now he says to his steward, take these men to my home and slaughter an animal and make ready, for these men will dine with me at noon. These guys are going to have lunch with me. And the man did as Joseph ordered, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house. So he interacts with Joseph's brothers at this point. Maybe Joseph stands back and he's not even present. But the guy's like, hey, the prime minister saw you guys coming, and he's made arrangements for you to have lunch at his house. What would be going through their minds in that moment, right? I mean, they don't know he's Joseph. They are afraid of him. They've got this delicate balance thing going on. What's going to happen? Oh, great, maybe he's going to feed us lunch and kill us all. Don't know what's going to happen. It says, verse 18, now the men were afraid because they were brought into Joseph's house. Look what they said. It is because of the money which was returned in our sacks. Guilty conscience again. The first time that we are brought in so that he may make a case against us and seize us and take us as slaves and kill us and hurt us and maybe even hurt our donkeys. I don't know why they were worried about the donkeys in that moment, but that's what it says. Take us as slaves with our donkeys. Whatever. They still carry the guilty conscience. And when they drew near to the steward of Joseph's house, I love this. They talked with him at the door of the house, and I envision like all of them like on their knee, one of them grabbing the guy's shirt, and like it's just like all in one breath, this all coming out. They said, "Oh sir, we indeed came down to buy food, but it happened when we came into the cabin and we opened our sacks, and then there was each man's money in the mouth of the sack. It was full of money, full of weight, and so we brought it back in our hand, and we brought down our other money in our hand to buy food. We don't know what happened. We don't know what happened. Sorry." Was that good?
Yes.
Okay. Hyperventilating. Hope it's worth it. We don't know who put the money in our sacks. Begging, pleading, crying, shaking. We're gonna die! Let's leave it there for this one. Stay tuned. Next bat. Same bat time, same bat channel. No, let's read the next line. Sorry. One more line. One more word. Well, verse 23. This is the steward speaking, the Egyptian steward. But he said, peace. And in the original text in the Hebrew, it's shalom. He said, shalom. Hey guys. Peace. I wonder if they received it in that moment. We'll find out. We'll continue reading next week. But all because of their perspective, they're lacking the understanding of the blessings that they are receiving and all that God is doing in this divine orchestration. All because they have the wrong perspective. So we'll continue the story next week. It gets better, just the way it all unfolds. If you've read it before, it's such a great story. I love Joseph. I love the story of Joseph. I love that Genesis spends 13 chapters on him. He's such a man of character, and we've got a lot to learn from him. If you're carrying a guilty conscience today, if nothing else, learn that God is waiting to receive that from you. That Jesus has interceded on our behalf to bear our guilt and our shame. That it was upon the cross, the yoke that he took on his back, that we might have forgiveness of sin, that we might have redemption, a right relationship, that we may be brought into atonement at one with God. And you don't have to carry that anymore. There's been so many times, and there's seasons in my life where I carry more guilt than other seasons. And I go back to the Psalms where it says, cast all your cares on him, for he cares for you. That's all we have to do, is to say, I don't want to carry this anymore, Dad. He says, I got it. I'll take care of it. Jesus paid for that. That's not your burden to carry anymore. And we can rise in grace, and we can rise in mercy, and we can rise in peace. Amen?
Amen.
Let's stand, let's close. Father, today's been fun. Thank you for this time in your word. Thank you for this amazing story of Joseph and his brothers. Thank you for the way that you work behind the scenes to make provision for us and to care for us. Thank you that your perspective is the right perspective. Help us to change our perspective and align it with yours. Help us to trust that you are sovereign over all and that you're in control. Help us to lay down our burdens of guilt and shame and to rise up to bless your name. We love you, Lord. We know that you love us. We praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. I love you, Lord, and I lift my voice to worship you, oh my soul, rejoice. Take joy, my King, in what you hear. May it be a sweet, sweet sound in your ear. Just curious to know. I said we had 26 pages. I'm on page 13. So well, that matters. Guys, have a good weekend. We'll see you next Sunday for part B.